We are once again with our guest co-host, John Zechner, this time to discuss the Canadian telecom sector and what he says the worst in the sector could be part of the past.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, Roger. I think the worst is over. But indulge me for a second, because we're sitting in this beautiful studio. I've been, we're
down memory lane for a minute.
And I remember when this place was built in the early '60s, and CFTO, Channel 9, just come on, and was the only thing you could see for miles around. Actually, I was saying to you, I did my first ever TV interview back in 1988 here with the Arthur Vail, which you remember from that old Vail report business. And I don't know if your viewers know this. Over the years, too, there's been a lot of films and movies made in this studio. Probably the most sort of well-known would be the iconic 1976 Academy Award-winning film Network. I don't know if they talked about that. That was filmed here, where Howard Beale did that famous rant of, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." So this place has quite a history. So, but it's interesting, Roger. You and I were talking about the.
and you're back now. Okay.
And we're back now.
But it is an incredible building. I mean, this building has been around a long time.
It really is. Yeah.
And we're probably going to see some more history here as well. But let's talk about why you like the telecom sector.
It's just and it's funny, we're talking about the consolidation in this sector and the way it's been so strong. But I think the telcos had a lot. During the pandemic, they were the winners earlier on. Everybody was home. The robust networks did very well. Everybody was streaming a lot more, and that was a great benefit. And they had this great run. And then suddenly, about 3 years ago, what happened is the migration thing slowed down, the immigration slowed down a little bit. And that's your biggest source of new users, because everybody's got a cell phone. So you need that in order to get the growth. You started to see people worried about the capitalization and the spend. They had to increase that. And that's when Rogers obviously did their buy of Shaw. BCE had problems with their free cash flow. And suddenly, the sector came under pressure, and it's been that for a couple of years now. And then obviously the bigger thing was on the wireless side. You had a legitimate fourth player when Rogers had to get rid of Freedom Mobile. So it sold it to Quebecor, and they were, a stronger fourth player, and you got into a bit of a pricing war. That seems to be moderating now and passing. And I think the worst has passed for that. So I think, we're going to start to see growth in cash flow again, and get back to free cash flow. And the valuations have come down tremendously. All of these companies are trading at sort of 6 to 7 times operating cash flow. You got decent dividend yields. They'll be generating free cash flow again. And then also some of the ancillary assets. In Toronto, we're getting a great example of this, despite the disappointment against Seattle over the weekend. Rogers is sort of co-managing, their sports asset tremendously. When you own the teams, the buildings, and the network that develops the products, you can consolidate that very well. I think the Leafs yesterday played Detroit. For anybody who stayed at the game, they could stay at the game after and then watch the Jays on the big screen, and it all flows down to Rogers. We won't talk about the score, but that aside. So, I think these are good quality long-term assets that are maybe underappreciated by the market. You're starting to generate free cash flow. It's a decent dividend yield. It's this is the kind of thing I'm looking for in the market right now, Roger. I'm not looking, just chase the things that are winning and keep going higher. I'm looking for stuff where it's a little more defensive. I can defend it with valuations. I got downside protection in terms of yield and valuation, and where it's not as maybe cyclical or certainly not impacted negatively by tariffs.
But you mentioned about the immigration has dropped off. That was one of the main sources. Where do they replace that source for new customers?
I don't think they will replace that necessarily. I think the immigration will start to pick up again. I think it sort of got to a nadir, and now it's sort of maybe stabilized, and it'll start to slowly grow again. And who knows, we may get a lot of coming from the U.S. at the rate we're sort of seeing it lately. But it'll be more the ARPU, like the average revenue per user, because I think what you're driving is more content, more use. I think everybody does that. They're sort of taking more bandwidth. AI will do it. Streaming is obviously continuing to grow. So, in a way, these are infrastructure assets that are not treated as infrastructure assets. And it's still, you got 4 players, not 3, but it's still a pretty good oligopoly.
So you see them more as having more corporate clients than as opposed to customers?
I think you're just driving more revenue per user. And then on the AI scale, I think telecom companies are probably, like healthcare, one of the ones who can implement AI to the greatest degree in terms of cost savings down the road. That may not be good on employment numbers ultimately, probably not the thing to say out loud in this building or something like that, but ultimately I think it'll be, one of those industries that can sort of increase productivity a little bit more on that basis.